everybody. Andrew from the Zelda Hub here once again. Last week, I hope you guys enjoyed as we tried something new with our roundtable discussion of Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. Had many members of the Zelda universe here with us. The Zelda Hub, I should say. Zelda universe is a completely different animal. And this week we have another special guest with us. So we continue our series of talking with the cast of Breath of the Wild. We've had many others here before. We spoke with Jamie Mortellaro a couple of weeks ago, and we had a lot of fun talking with him and his experiences with working with Nintendo for many, many years. And this year we bring a little bit of royalty back. Not just any royalty, though. We've had Zora princes and princesses and other types of royalty from Hyrule. But this week, we have not just any royalty, but the princess herself, Zelda, Patricia Summersett. Say hello to the Zelda Hub.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Zelda Hub.
Yeah, some of you longtime listeners might remember we actually kicked off this series a couple of years ago with a little short message and a written little article that I wrote interviewing Miss Summersett here. And that kind of started things off. That kind of got the wheels going for our podcast here. And that little message she did for us on YouTube is actually the most watched episode of anything that we have on YouTube. So, Patricia, it's been... 3 years now since Breath of the Wild came out?
Yeah, man, 3.5 years, in fact.
Yeah, we're actually going closer to the anniversary of the DLC than the actual game itself. Yeah. A lot of people have reached out to us over the years, about you. We've had a lot of discussions in the Zelda Hub on the Facebook page and on Twitter and stuff. When you found out, now we know when you're auditioning, you have no idea what you're auditioning for. You don't know this is Princess Zelda.
That's right. Yeah, that's and it's every once in a while you do, but for the grand majority of video games, you don't know what you're auditioning for, and this was no exception.
That's right, and then it's mostly due to especially Nintendo. They're so secretive and protective over their IP, and rightfully so. They're a lot like Disney is. They don't like information getting out, even if it's by accident. It's not something they'd like to deal with. But when you did find out, when you finally got the news, hey, not only are you working on a Zelda game, but you're the titular character, how's your reaction to that?
Well, I've told people that I almost peed my pants, which is, I didn't literally almost pee my pants, but it was a very big adrenaline rush and something that would be hard to recreate. I guess there are certain moments in life where you get news and you know that it rocks your present reality, and hopefully it's a good rush. In this case, I knew that my trajectory could potentially shift with this news, and it was a lot to wrap my head around in a moment. And I was just thrilled to be part of any game, and then to find out that that's in fact what it was. And then it was followed, my second reaction to that was then immense fear that I was going to somehow mess it all up and then lose the opportunity, which of course is part of the actor's highs and lows, I guess. I feel like every actor knows what that is. But I was just completely thrilled, but more mind-boggled, almost confused. Like, how could this be?
I could only imagine the range of emotions that you would have because, I'm not really old, but I'm almost 40 years old. I've played Zelda since the original, and back in the 8-bit days of the NES, and I've seen every incarnation of the princess over the years. And to the surprise of maybe some of our younger viewers who have not played some of those older games, there was a point where Princess Zelda didn't even have a personality. She was just a pixel, and you had to go save her, and she thanked you in the end, and that was the end. That was all she did. She thanked you for saving her, and the game was over. And now here we are, 30 years later, and you look at the Breath of the Wild version of this character. So many, Zeldas that we've loved over the years. But at the end of the day, she's always been like, here, you gotta save her. Or here, she's your partner. Or here, she's not really that big part of a game. If you look at games like Majora's Mask and the Oracle's game, she really doesn't have a big role. But then you come to Breath of the Wild. If anything, she's the major focus of the game. She's what kind of drives the game and what guides you along. And not only that, she's got this big personality with her. And the most personality
Mm.
we'd really gotten out of Zelda would be Wind Waker and Skyward Sword. And even then, like, she was just kind of like this character that drove the plot. In this game, I felt like she was so much more. She has more character development than any character in that game. And
Mm.
I personally thought you did an amazing job of giving her that life that she needed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I've certainly given it my ultimate best. That's for sure. You don't go into a role like that and sort of you don't go into a role like that casually, you know. I find being this character, this first voice of Zelda, regardless. I mean, you know, it's obviously just it's the first English voice.
Right.
It's just one of the dubs, but for some reason, I mean, and for the reasons that you're talking about, yeah, the development of the character has been such a big part of the the theme of Breath of the Wild. And I think that speaks to video games as a whole these days. I mean, I think more and more now there are so many opportunities for video games to be, you know, they have cutscenes that they didn't have before. It's like to
Yeah.
such a degree, you know, it's gotten so cinematic. And you have a lot of people who are writers coming over to video games and looking to flesh out video game storytelling in a different kind of classical structure as what they would have had for theater and cinema. And I'm loving that direction. And it's, let's admit, I mean, it was sort of, it was long overdue that she did have more of a personality.
Yeah.
And the fact that she now has a kind of, you know, she's got that cynical bit to her as well. And you know, she's edgy. She's a little edgy.
That's what I like about her. I've said this, and I've mentioned this to Jamie in our interview. This Zelda to me is more relatable because in the past, like
Totally.
she's this perfect, picture perfect royal princess who has no flaws. In this one, they give her many flaws. She shows jealousy, anger, things we have not seen from Zelda before. She has a whole range of emotion. We see her fun side, the lovable little frog scene with Link. She's curious. She's kind of nerdy. She's a scientist at heart, and she just wants to, explore. And I really like that they went that direction with her because it would have been very easy for Nintendo to be like, okay, here she is. She's a princess. We're going to put her in a gown and, have her do princessy things. But no, they you know, she's so well developed, they could easily at some point say, "Hey, you know what we could do with this is maybe give her own game one day or something." And that's something Zelda fans have talked about. God,
Mm.
for 20 some years, I've heard, well, give Zelda her own game. She's the titular character after all.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Nintendo for listening to their fans because they certainly do a lot of that. I think when they look at their analytics and they go in and they decide what directions they're going to go, I mean, I think they care very much, like overall, what fans are saying and what they need. Um, yeah, I agree. I often get asked, you know, because it's been 3.5 years now since this. I can't even believe it's been 3.5 years. Like it blows my
Oh, I
mind.
know.
It's become a part of, well, become a part of the canon, but a part of my own personal canon as well. Like my life canon is now partially, you know, being Zelda along with everything else. It kind of just overtook everything else that I was doing there for a while. And I'm really only now getting back to a place where I'm focusing on other kinds of artistic endeavors. Like I'm starting to write more. I've been consumed with the Zelda stuff and Comic Cons and
Oh,
just sort of I
yeah.
was sort of balancing it alongside everything else because it did sort of do that to my career in a sense.
In the Zelda
Yeah.
community, you speak of cons. The Zelda community, it's become such a huge thing over the years.
Mm.
There's cosplay, there's fan art, there's all of this artistic side of Zelda, and I've said this many times here on the podcast and to people in general that I'm part of a lot of fandoms. I like Star Wars. I like Lord of the Rings. I like baseball. Many different things. But the one thing that I've followed over the years that produces the most creative fans has got to be Legend of Zelda. They come out of the woodwork.
In a little green suit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was when you said Lord of the Rings, I was thinking like it's so funny because Zelda brought me to New Zealand last year where I got to visit Hobbiton, which was
Oh.
so cool. Um, I, yeah, I would have to say that like the cosplay is, I mean, the cosplay for all those fandoms is pretty amazing, and I've seen a fair bit now, but boy, I mean, there is nothing like good Zelda cosplay.
Oh yeah.
There's just yeah. And when you were mentioning, they could have put her in a dress, and I was like, well, but they did. They
Yeah.
put her in pants, and then they also gave her some, gorgeous dresses,
Kind of like that.
gorgeous
Get you a
design.
girl that can do both, right?
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, they did go that direction. She'll run around in a dress and hold a frog and do the whole thing.
I was doing my little bit of research on you before, and I found that there are other games that you've worked on. You've been doing this for a good while now. If I'm correct, you can correct me here because the internet is the land of misinformation.
Yes, certainly.
Your first video game was the Beowulf video game, right?
Mm, that was my first AAA game. So before I got Beowulf, I'd actually done several games. There was a company called Gameloft in Montreal that I did a bunch of like indie games with. I think it was quite a young company at the time and I was quite young getting into it out of university. I still hadn't graduated yet, and I started auditioning for video games. I was thrilled to think of doing voice work as a career alongside theater and film, and I just knew it was going to be part of something that I would pursue. Partly because I sang, partly because I was riveted by being able to change my voice at that time, and I realized that I actually had a range that I was like, oh wow, I could actually use this. I could learn accents. I can try to do kids' voices. Not that you always do that stuff, but yeah. So I ended up doing, let's say, like 2 years of video game and voice work before I got the Beowulf game. And that one came after I'd done like a new professional demo with somebody sort of paid to have like a kind of like a third professional demo done, and that was maybe more legit for what I needed. And then that got passed on to a casting director, and the casting director said they happened to be looking for a voice match for Angelina Jolie because at that time the Beowulf movie had come out and they were doing the video game alongside it, and she'd opted out of the video game. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, they were like, your voice sounds like it could be Angelina Jolie, doing a Slavic accent or something, like that, just
Yeah.
something that I would be. They're like, can you do like a sort of okay, Eastern European Slavic accent, and then sort of like work with her vocal range there, and that yeah, for Grendel's mother. And so I got the part, and that was like, it was wow, man. I thought if you would have asked me at that time, that felt like what Zelda felt like, I guess, getting that at that time, because it was my first AAA game, and I thought that I just made it, doing this
Yeah.
one game. I was like, oh my god, it was great.
That's so amazing. And then you've also worked, and I'm pretty sure a lot more fans have heard of this series. You worked on the Assassin's Creed series, right?
I have, yes. Um, Particularly Assassin's Creed Rogue and AC Syndicate, playing the characters and doing the performance capture and facial capture for Hope Jensen and Galina Voronina.
Also, you also did like the motion capture. Now that's a completely different
Yeah,
animal. Um,
it is. I do a fair bit of motion capture, actually. That's a part of my career that I love very much. I'm doing it next week.
and
So
I have to, just using my own assumptions here. I know you have a dance background, if I'm not correct, right?
that's right. Yeah, I have a competitive ice dance background,
And
which
do
is
you incorporate some of the some of that into your motion capture and how that works?
yes, in strange and surprising ways. But I would say if you have any kind of dance or strong movement background, you do sort of incorporate it into everything that you do. It stays with you. It's part of your brain body wiring at some point. when you do it that much. Like, I'm not in decent shape like I was, but that the ability that I know that if I wanted to go and like flip around or flip on somebody's shoulders and get spun and do a trick, I could just do that. Like, my brain thinks that I can still do that.
I've
Probably
always
would want
liked
to
to watch
try it now.
those. I've always liked to watch those ice dancers. They're so talented. I
Yeah.
can't imagine just the physicality of that, and people don't realize that because when you think of sports and stuff like that, and you think like baseball players, basketball players, and stuff like
I
that, you
play
don't
both of those
think
as well,
about
by the way.
the physical the time and the effort that skaters actually put into their bodies and the workouts they do. It's amazing.
It really is. I mean, all of those sports at any high level just require hours and hours every day. But I'd say figure skating is particularly tricky, which is why I don't still do it. I mean, I for a while I thought that's all I wanted to do before I got into acting. And I mean, it's so intense that when I got into the theater program, I was like, ah, wow, this is actually sustainable for a lifetime, as if acting was far less high octane than figure skating. What a funny, I laugh at that now because I'm like, it's about the most sort of like weird and tumultuous career that you can choose. But actually figure skating would have been more so. So
So you've got this wide range of talents and skills, and you've been able to be very successful in a wide variety of things. And I kind of want to flip this a little, and I've spoken about this with some of the other actors that we've spoke with. With anything in life that you do, especially when you're dealing with the public, you deal with a lot of critics, and
mhm.
for whatever reasons people have it seems like that you with the voice of Zelda have this little vocal crowd over to the side here that likes to criticize it. And
Oh
and
yeah.
people, they have their own conceived notions of what something should be. And
Mhm.
as a Star Wars fan, God knows I've seen a lot of that. A lot of people who think that something should be a certain way before it comes out, and then when it comes out and it's not their way, they hit the internet. I'm looking at you, sequel fans of the Star Wars trilogy. And how do you deal when you're on? I know everybody gets online, of course, and they read things, and you want to see the feedback. When you see that crowd of people who say maybe not such unkind things, how do you react to that?
I've reacted to that differently every year. I've grown up a lot in the last 3.5 years since the game came out. I've never been bombarded with such negativity before and also such positivity before.
Right.
And so when I've seen both sides, at some point you realize it has nothing to do with you, really. And you just have to step back. And if it's not useful, don't look at it. But I didn't start out that way. When the game first came out, I mean, I was also trying to get used to what it was going to be like because people would be asking me questions constantly, and I would be
Right.
going on panels, and I needed to be sort of informed. And it's better to know kind of what's out there than to have people on a panel be like, oh, all and tell you about the negative things that they've seen, and then you be up there in front of hundreds of people and trying to adjust to that information or something. So I did find it like I rather most often in life I tend to like to stare at things in the face, and I like to know. Maybe that's because I'm an actor, and I'm always interested in the light and dark side of everything and the what it is to be human.
Right.
But at some point, you do need to back up from that because it becomes an unhealthy, disproportionate. It's not in proportion. The internet itself is not a proportionate place. I mean,
Oh
just as we
no.
were talking about just earlier with fake news, for example. I mean, we just mentioned that. But yeah, I mean, they say fake news travels 6 times faster than real news on the
That's the
internet.
truth.
So what does that mean about negative commenting and algorithms and everything else that we're so prone to be doing as humans? So when you look at it like that, sometimes it's better to just back away, which funny enough, recently, I've been doing more and more of that. And the more creative work that I'm getting back into, the more I just back away from the internet entirely, and I feel so much better. And
Oh
it's so
yeah, it's
sad
definitely
that I
got to
don't
be
get to
good for
talk
your
to
mental
certain
health.
fans. Yeah, right, for everybody right now. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, and then some people go into Breath of the Wild and they play that game, and it makes them feel better and it gets them out of the humdrum of a lot of what's going on in life right
Oh,
now.
you're preaching
And
to the
then,
choir.
yeah, right. And I get to hear about those positive things about what the game is doing for them. And I always remember those moments too. I remember I have such great fan moments that cancel out the bad ones. and and that has nothing to do with me either, but just people who are really celebrating this franchise. I get to be part of the people who get to celebrate that franchise with them, and in such an immediate way. It's been one of the biggest gifts of my entire life and continues to be a gift that keeps giving. So
That's so awesome. There's a couple things I'd like to share with you. I think it was about a year ago, around this time, I did a poll in the we have a group on Facebook. I think we've added you to it. I think there's been a couple times you've actually even commented in there. I know Joe's in
yeah.
there. Joe's very active.
Mhm.
And Joe Hernandez, by the way, great guy.
Yeah, he
He
is
was the
great.
first podcast we did in the series, and he is
Oh,
an
fantastic.
absolutely friendly guy. And we're actually friends now. We talk about baseball and wrestling all the time.
Yeah.
But we did a poll, and because I like you, I'm kind of a curious sort. I like to know the light and the dark too. So I did a poll asking people, okay, for the haters out there, what is it about the voice of Princess Zelda that rubs you the wrong way? And I found like the biggest portion of people said it was the English accent. And
Hmm.
I thought that's odd because The Legend of Zelda is a fantasy series,
Hmm.
and a quote unquote English accent is kind of the go-to accent for most fantasy. You watch Lord of the Rings, and pretty much everybody's got an English accent. Gandalf, all of them.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they have a bunch of different kinds of English accents, and
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I, I understand that that's been such a massive issue. It's funny because people seem to have cared less when I went to the UK, and met people there, and they had nothing. They were just thrilled, had nothing to say about it. Funny enough, which I found strange. I almost found I got more flack in the US for that,
Yeah.
and I didn't decide that. I mean, I did an audition with a UK based accent, but they completely decided what they were going to approve and what they wanted to go forward with. That, you know, that's just not even up to me.
And I think that's something the fans don't think about when they make these
No.
criticisms. They don't think about, hey, it's not like she wrote these parts. She didn't write the dialogue. She's basically, here's someone doing their job. They're supposed to be this English sounding character, and that's what they auditioned for, and that's they're handed a script, and that's the script that they have to work from. And a lot of people don't think about that. It's the same, if you're familiar, are you at all familiar with Star Wars?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So in the sequel trilogy, there was a character played by Kelly Marie Tran called Rose.
Yeah.
And she got all kinds of flack from the internet. I'm
Yeah.
talking about like 10 times worse than anything that I've seen anybody deal with for her character, which a lot of people felt was not portrayed very well. That it was kind of a character that they could have done without, and
Wow. As if that's fault. I mean, that's
yeah,
my
it
gosh.
was so bad she had to leave she had to basically delete her social media. It's how
Poor
bad it
her.
got.
I can relate on some level just because I've had things like that I've had some death threats and
Oh wow.
people that have like it gets there and you're like, wow, it's next level. And most of the time you feel protected, but there's always that thing in the back of your mind, yeah, nobody wants to receive death threats or have
No.
people say really horrible things. And of course, and just as many and more people who reach out to me directly usually want to say positive things, but there are those people that are absolutely and they might be mentally not in a great place
Right.
and reaching out to, so who knows? They can be from anywhere in the world. People can reach out when you have public accounts. I can only imagine what she must have gone through. I mean, Star Wars is, oof, boy, heated fans. Absolutely.
Yeah, and
And
as
for
much as we
her
love
being on such
Zelda,
an amazing series. Yeah.
yeah, as much as
Like,
we love Zelda, Star Wars is like 8 billion times bigger. So
right.
everything that those actors are dealing with, just it's even bigger because that's part of
It's their
fabric.
face. Well,
Yeah, Star Wars,
yeah.
and reading about the bullying, I read about that Hayden Christensen, the actor for Anakin
Oh, yeah.
Skywalker, and I don't remember the guy's name, whoever did the voice and the body capture stuff for Jar Jar Binks.
Mm,
Like he had went through like mental health issues because of it, and went through a really dark time in his life because of the hate. And it's like, people gotta realize that you all are human beings with lives and families, and and you're just doing your job. You're just trying to make a living, and you're trying to make your place in the world. And making death threats isn't going to change anything. If anything, it's going to make things worse.
oh, absolutely. I mean, well, in some ways it does change. I mean, I wouldn't want to get any more, but
No.
I'm better prepared to deal with that when it does come my way, and better prepared to understand and empathize with a certain kind of thick skin that is needed, that I didn't have before. I never had to employ.
Well, it's kind of
So
like Princess Zelda. She started off not very sure of herself, and she was trying to find her way and trying to fulfill this destiny that had been preordained for her. And by the end of the game, she's strong. She's got that power now, and she knows how she can help. And it's kind of like with you. You started off kind of looking at things in a different way, and now here you are. You're a lot stronger as a result of dealing with that negativity. You used it
that's
well.
very well put. It's so interesting that you say that. I've been thinking a lot about that this year. Obviously, it's a year where everybody is thinking about how they can be stronger in the face of global catastrophe,
Right.
which is what the games deal with, which is what the games, um, which the voyeur through these characters, and you get to go into worlds where that may have happened, and be a hero. I have been thinking a lot about what it means to have my own voice right now. And so much of that has come from the questions that I've been asked in the last year, specifically because of the voice of Zelda. So
Yeah.
I don't know where that's going to land, but it's probably going to have, I mean, there will be some creative work that comes out of it. I'm writing a screenplay right now, things like that. Who knows it just, they're beginnings, but new approaches to what it means to have my own voice in a more powerful manner, in the way that Zelda has inspired so many other people around the world that I've gotten to hear about. I'm like, how does she inspire me exactly? And I'm like, wow, she's strong. She
Oh,
really
she
is.
really is. And that's a great segue into the second thing I wanted to share with you before we head into our quick little Q&A here. Around the times Breath of the Wild came out, that was March of 2017, right?
Yeah.
I had just not even a year before that lost my mom,
Oh,
and
I'm so
then my
sorry.
dad died a few months after that. Yeah,
Wow.
so I'd had like the year from hell. In fact, my dad died 2 months before Breath of the Wild came out. It was January 2017. And I was at an all time low. So a good friend of mine who happens to be my editor said, "Hey, I'm going to buy you a Switch and I'm going to get you Breath of the Wild. Something to help you feel better." And I'm going to tell you what, that game, and it brought me out of the biggest depression I'd ever had in my life. And it did so much for me in terms of just f- putting things behind me, because I was living in their house. I'd taken care of my mom and dad for years, and had put my career on hold and everything. My whole life was on hold just to take care of them. And that game just helped me forget for the little bit of time, I would sit down each day and turn my Switch on and play. I was able to forget. And good Lord, just that you talked about it earlier, how a little bit earlier about how games can do things like this for people, and it definitely did for me. It helped me in so many ways, like nothing ever did before. And I'd played them all, but it's the emotional connection I have to Breath of the Wild. It's definitely my favorite game of all time, and I'm a 30-year gamer. I started playing when the Atari 2600 was the thing. On behalf of every Zelda fan out there, thanks for what you did for the game, because I think you made a wonderful contribution.
My gosh, Andrew. Well, I have the privilege of talking to a true super fan with a deep emotional connection to the game. So you're welcome for anything that I may have contributed to such a special game for you.
Well, you definitely gave life to what is my favorite iteration of Princess Zelda for sure. Um, Definitely, absolutely adore her. I have the little first four figure statue that came out, a few months ago. I have an entire room of my house. I've posted pictures of this online a couple times. That is nothing but Legend of Zelda stuff. Right as you come into my house, you open the door. Right directly in front of you is this small. It used to be a porch many years ago, and the people that owned this house before I moved in converted it into a room, and I turned that into like just a Zelda shrine pretty much, and it's just chock full of different things in there. Yeah, I love my Zelda, but yeah, I want to go ahead and do a little quick Q&A with you. Got a couple fan questions sent in here. Um,
Sure thing.
the first one comes from Tiffany. She is from Connecticut,
Hello, Tiffany from Connecticut.
and Tiffany asks, "What is your favorite type of music and genre?"
Ho ho. That is a really good question. I'm very bad with giving favorites, for one, um, because it really changes all the time. But being that I have my own band and we do folk music, I would have to say the kind of music that we make is the kind of music that I often like to listen to, which is a sort of natural music, like strings, drum, harmonies, kind of soulful and chill, yeah, chill folk with classical and jazz mixed in. At dinner, I like to listen to some bossa nova and nice old style jazz.
Oh, nice.
And I'm a big fan of generally, like in general, an ambience of classical music. I love. I would say classic rock is one of the most sort of nostalgic musics for me, just because I grew up in a really small town, and my dad would listen to Tom Petty and
Oh yeah, I love Tom Petty.
yeah, Tom Petty, Led Zeppelin, the Who, all those guys. Like those are big ones for me. Fleetwood Mac.
Oh yeah, you're definitely speaking my language here.
Yeah, even though like I'm actually just a bit young to have grown up at that in that time. Of course, and you are too. Still,
Yeah,
like even at that time and now, like it was our parents' music, and it was like, wow,
yeah.
isn't it great music? Like such great music. So I'm kind of lean towards that. I'm not into modern day pop much at all, or country. I find it too samey and electronic for me, too computerized,
Yeah.
and it kills my ears.
Oh,
And because I'm such a sound person, I just like it will ruin my spirit if I listen to the station too long. So I have to I almost avoid it at all costs, to be honest. But yeah, classic rock, classic jazz, bossa nova, and folk. There we are, all in one.
great taste. I have to say, I listen to a lot of the same kind of stuff you do. And good point there about the parents. Like most of my music taste comes from either from my mom and dad or from my grandparents. When I was real little, they play Elvis constantly, and
Oh
to this
yeah.
day, I love Elvis. How can you not? He's a classic, and my mom loved all of that stuff from the '60s and '70s. And then I grew up. My mom used to tell this story. Whenever she needed me to not be in her face while she did other things, she would give me a glass of Pepsi, sit me in front of the TV, and I would zone out on MTV. Just Madonna, Prince, Michael Jackson, all that '80s stuff, and then it's just my playlist is so weird. It's like you'll go from Michael Jackson to Imagine Dragons to
Mm.
Bob Marley to John Denver. It has no rhyme or reason. It's just if something clicks with me, it just clicks with me, and just I try to like stuff from all genres, though some of them really don't click with me at all. Like I can't get into rap at all. But there
Yeah,
is
I
a
think
couple rap songs that I do like.
that are amazing. Yeah, a
Yeah,
couple of rap songs that transcend any boundary, and they're amazing.
right.
It's funny that you mentioned John Denver. There's a very huge theme in my family. I have three sisters, and two of them are singers.
Uh huh.
And we, but we grew up with the Muppet Baby Christmas Carol,
Oh yeah.
singing with John Denver. And every year when we're home, which is more rare these days when we all get home at the same time, but we know that whole album by heart. So we will like
Well,
all the
my
part
state
going.
song is Country Roads.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
from West
Yeah.
Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
he's
right.
royalty around here.
That
You
makes
go to any kind of sporting event or anything around here, I can promise you somebody is going to be singing Country Roads.
Mm.
All right, our second question comes from Barry from, God, sometimes I can't read my own writing. I get in a rush. I believe he's from Colorado. Barry, if you're not from Colorado, I'm sorry. Barry would like to know when you after the Zelda game came out, Breath of the Wild. I'm assuming that's what he meant. How many hours did you put into it?
Ooh, probably about like 40. And then I haven't really played much since. I've played occasionally with friends, but I don't game at home. I'm the busiest person on earth, and gaming is, man, it doesn't become a habit. I do it for work and I do it with friends. And like I went through a stint this last year where I played a lot of Rayman.
Oh, Rayman's great.
Yeah, but that's because I was with people, and at the time, my boyfriend at the time, his kid was playing, and so we had a great time. And then we got back into the old NES, and we were playing the original Zelda, and we were,
Oh yeah.
what else were we playing? Gosh, I'm trying to think of what else was on there. I'm trying to have Mario, of course. But I don't pick it up myself in the same way that I try to avoid being on social media too much, and I try to limit my screen time because I have so much of it to begin with. Um, but yeah, I put in a chunk, which could be the completion of another game, and didn't even get me like. I think I got to like the Great Fairy, which I loved, and back and forth through the village.
And I
Yeah, it's
think
pretty disappointing. I was like sure I was going to beat that thing, and no.
I'll
Maybe I
never.
still will. Maybe I still will. I'll go back and play it again.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you get the time, go ahead and play some of those classics and just kind of lose yourself in them. Because I've often said there's no such thing as a bad Zelda game.
Oh,
Some may not be as good as others, but they're all there's something I heard somebody say once, and I thought this was the smartest thing I ever heard. There may be Zelda games that are bad video games, but there's no bad Zelda games.
I can be down with that statement. Absolutely.
I'll tell you something I'd like to see. Just a side note here. I've mentioned in the past on here about Skyward Sword, how I felt like it was the most cinematic Zelda game of all time. It felt like a movie. Just the beautifully orchestrated soundtrack to these long, detailed cutscenes that they did. It truly felt like Zelda the movie. And I've said for years that they should remake that game for a modern audience, and a lot of people, because a lot of people didn't like the motion controls, they didn't like the Wii,
Mm,
and
yeah.
the Switch is so much better. And if they could remake that and add the voice acting and bring some of you guys in to do it, I think it would make that game 10 times better.
I wonder what they would do with that though, being that that's a different iteration of Zelda.
That's a
I
good
always wonder
question.
about that, like what Nintendo would do with that sort of thing. I
We'll
don't know. I
probably
mean,
find out one day because eventually, they're going
yeah.
to go onto another Zelda. And, it was
Oh
such a
yeah.
crazy thing when we all found out that there was going to be voice acting in Breath of the Wild. Everybody was like, whoa. Because the most
Yeah.
voice acting we got in a Zelda game before this was the first Hyrule
The
Warriors game,
soul of the
had a
hero of
narrator.
legend.
And that was pretty much it. The most we'd ever had would be little clips of Link going like, yeah, yeah. just making his little grunts and his yachts and stuff like that. But Hyrule Warriors brought us a narrator, but Breath of the Wild, we found out it's going to be fully voice acted, and everybody was like, "Oh, whoa, whoa!" Nintendo's been steering away from that for decades because they'd had such a bad experience with those Zelda CDI games. Have you ever seen those, by the way?
Not in their entirety, but they're a part of my life nonetheless.
So, as a voice actor, if you haven't seen the cutscenes, you could definitely find them on YouTube.
Oh, I've seen some of the cutscenes. I just mean I haven't watched them like cover to cover,
It's basically, if any of our listeners who have never watched or seen those cutscenes, imagine a poorly drawn, poorly animated, just almost like it was a fan game. That's how bad it was. Just like somebody made this in their mom's basement. And the voice acting in it is basically like, is Jim from security busy at the moment? We need somebody to come in and voice this wizard.
Yeah.
It was so terrible.
I have to say, like, I empathize though with the actors who were in that, because they wouldn't have known at the time what they were going to deal with, like whatever that was 20 years later, of people like being like, worst, Zelda iteration of all time, blah blah. I'm like, poor them. They were just doing a gig, and probably it was funny at the time.
I would absolutely love to find them and get them on the podcast and be like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this for a minute, because I got questions and I have a lot of them.
I would love. What is her name? Is it Cindy Preston, or the woman who did the voice of Zelda in that? Anyway, I don't know her, but I should get in touch with her sometime, and we should have a coffee and have like a good old chuckle. I would love that.
The meeting of the Zeldas, that would be really cool.
I would love to meet with the Zeldas around the world who all did the different dubs.
Oh, that would
particularly
be awesome.
The Japanese Zelda, but I mean, like, all of them. Wouldn't it be so awesome if we did a big reunion and just to have like a big sort of like Zelda communal party? I think
some con out there needs to organize this.
They do.
It would be great to get, and not even just the Zeldas, get the iterations of Urbosa and.
Can you imagine a bunch of Urbosas walking around in different languages? It's hard for me to even fathom.
Oh wow! I've actually heard some of the. I'm a deep nerd, so I look up all this stuff, and I've heard some of the voices, and they're all so different. In some countries, they're completely different than what you think they would be. Like the Japanese version of Rivali is nothing like Sean's version of the character. He's completely different.
Yeah.
But I want to get to our last question here. This one comes from Carrie from my neck of the woods. She's from Charleston, West Virginia.
Hello, Carrie.
And Carrie wants to know if you could voice any character besides Zelda in the entire Zelda series, who would it be?
In the entire Zelda series. Oh, I've often said when I get that question, I mean, if I could, I would like to do the Great Fairy. I would like to sort of go and hide, like not have my name on it, but just do it anyway. And I love the Koroks so much.
Oh,
so, yeah, I get a lot of pleasure out of the Koroks. So it'd probably be some obscure character like that. It's really hard to beat what I've already been doing.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sometimes I get asked that question about outside of the franchise, and I generally say Shira because she's the one that I grew up with.
Oh, I love
but the
Shira.
thing is, like, yeah, but she's got so many great iterations already in like that new series, and I'm like, I
really need to watch that.
Yeah,
I have not seen the new Shira. That's on Netflix, right?
I believe so. Yeah, Netflix now. It has like 2 seasons, I think.
I need to check that out because the one from a kid. I actually like Shira more than I did He-Man. He-Man made me feel uncomfortable. He still makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like, he looks like he's a gimp. Like, seriously, that outfit that's not normal there, pal. You don't wear that in public. Put a shirt on. Put some pants. God, though, I had all of those toys. When I was little, I had He-Man, Skeletor, Man-at-Arms. I had all, and I never got She-Ra, and we always told my mom, find us a She-Ra. And I don't know if Mom didn't because she didn't think boys should play with dolls, or if they just couldn't find any. But like I said, I like She-Ra more than I did He-Man. I thought she was cooler, and I thought she just
She
looked
was
awesome.
cooler. Let's face it, she was cooler.
She was. Okay, that kind of does it. We've had a great time here. You have absolutely been a class act. You're wonderfully
Oh,
talented human being. Is there anything before we go that you would like to plug or anything?
oh gosh. Oh, I haven't been very pluggy these days.
How about this? You
Yeah,
mentioned that
and
you did music.
I
Um,
did, yeah, and in fact, we are releasing a second album in 2021. So yeah, I should plug that for my
yeah,
band. They'd be pumped. Um, you can go to SMMERSETTband.com. I know that the name is Somerset. That's the name of the band, which is I always roll my eyes at, but that was not just my decision. That was the band's decision.
right.
Um, Assuming that it sounds also like a place and not just like my last name. Yeah, we have a great, lovely indie folk album coming out. And because it's been delayed, we're writing a couple of other new songs for it, but it should be out sometime, maybe spring 2021, maybe summer. We might have to delay it that long just because of
Right.
everything that's been going on. But we're so thrilled to release that. And we play as an 8-piece. It's really chill music, and it's got a beautiful classical strand through it. It's feel good. It's something that you can listen to just when you're hanging out or eating dinner, or you can listen and it's got a lot in the lyrics. So we're pretty thrilled about it. It's got a string quartet. Yeah. So
That
Somerset
sounds
Band.
awesome. I'll definitely I'll be sure to put a link to, you said Somerset, what was it again?
SomersetBand.com.
SomersetBand.com. Oh yeah, I'll definitely throw a link in the description here to that so that people can check that out. Thanks again for coming on the podcast. It's been an honor to have you here. And everybody at
Thank you,
home
Andrew.
who sent questions, thank you for that. Anybody who has listened to this, thank you. Next week, we're going to have another special guest on the show. Another voice actor from Breath of the Wild, Andy Gibson, the voice of Impa. And Impa has been a very hot topic of late. So we're going to have her on next week, and we're actually going to be recording one day after this. I'm a busy boy this week, and we'll get her on, and we'll see what kind of take on the Zelda series that she has. And just like Miss Summersett here, she has a lot of other things that she's done in her career as well, and we'll jump into that too. But that's going to be all for today. Thanks again, Patricia. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you, Andrew, and thanks for telling me your story. It's that's what I'm taking with me today, actually.
I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday for another episode of the Legend of Zelda podcast.
Bye.